Hello everybody, the Nameless Narcissist here once again, a simple man diagnosed with NPD, trying to clear up some misconceptions about the things that happen in my head and have a good time along the way. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, but keep in mind I am no clinician, I can only speak to my own experiences. So let's get started. Okay, so I was asked recently how to tell somebody who is pathologically narcissistic that they are pathologically narcissistic. And this I wanted to take more time to do this because I was like debating in my head. I was like, I don't like the idea of encouraging people to diagnose their partners and stuff, right? And more so, not accurately. I only woke up somebody to their NPD once, and all the times that I even remotely tried or tried to like kind of figure it out, I was wrong because I have a tendency to project, and like that can happen to anybody, right? But I was also thinking like, if this person is genuinely struggling and they have no idea what's going on, I feel like could be some good tips for how to kind of push them in the right direction. Keep them, please, also, this is just what would work for me, not for everybody, and please don't bring up being a narcissist in a fight, because if they are, that won't go very well at all. They will not be ready to hear that in that moment. So first of all, I'm going to say there's two types. One is the kind of person that's actively, obviously suffering from it, and then the other type is people who are a little bit more on the oblivious side, and don't have any at least overt suffering. I'm sure if they are pathologically narcissistic, they are at some level, but when you can't really see it. So the first thing for the person who is on the suffering side is they have to trust you. For my entire life, I had like basically one person who was like my confidant, so to speak, who I was comfortable not only being able to talk about some of the things I was experiencing, but also them telling me when my behaviors weren't ideal. Because we are hypersensitive to criticism, but we can accept it if it's presented a certain way. Like with a lot, like what always works for me when people try to talk to me about that stuff, they'll ask me why I did it, then I'll explain, and sometimes I'll just be insane, right? I'll be almost delusional in my motivations, and they'll say like, oh, I see why you did it like that, but I guess that's just not how I would do it. And then I'll be like, well, how would you do it? And then that kind of sparks a thing in me where I'm like, I kind of see what you mean. Yeah, it was kind of a dick move the way I did it. It wasn't necessary, whatever. So that kind of person in their life, I think, is one of the like most likely people that will be able to kind of give them insight into their own behaviors. Two, they have to be confiding those struggles with you. Again, like the confidant thing. So like them trusting you is kind of a segue into them being able to tell you about their issues and stuff. And hopefully if they're doing this, they'll say like, I don't know, I don't feel like how usually people who are pathologically narcissistic kind of describe it is they can't connect to people, nothing they do is ever good enough, and just anger issues probably. There was one more, what was it? I don't remember. Frank Yeomans said it really well. But they will like indicate some degree of struggling, because at some level, people who are pathologically narcissistic know that like something's not quite right usually, even when they're not aware. The third one, and this one I feel like will be the biggest kind of cutoff if you can even proceed in doing this. You have to ask them like, what do they think about mental health? Like, do they think it's like if there's somebody that's like, oh, people who are depressed are weak, blah blah blah, or don't think certain mental disorders exist and stuff, you're not really going to get anywhere with this. Because if they view that kind of stuff in that way, then it's like there's no way that you can frame narcissism in a way that they're really going to accept. And if I'm being honest, I would just kind of cut it out right there, because they're not going to view it as a mental disorder. They're going to view it as a negative personality trait, more or less. They're going to view it like they're going to basically be like, oh, you're not saying I have a mental illness, you're saying I'm a shitty person. So, oh well, give up. Number 4. You have to, so hopefully if they're like talking and they're like, yeah, I think something's wrong, etc., etc., you have to like kind of propose it in like a very indifferent way. Be like, oh, well, I don't know, have you considered like a personality disorder or something? And kind of dance around like using the term narcissist as much as you can. Because in this entire battle, you're not only fighting against their hypersensitivity to criticism, but you also kind of have to fight against some of the common misconceptions about pathological narcissism. Because if you don't kind of break those down first, they're going to be like, oh, fuck you, I'm a narcissist, so you're a fucking narcissist, piss off. So you kind of have to also like, it's like, oh, don't you struggle with your self-esteem and you fluctuate now? Oh, you're kind of moody sometimes. You have to kind of explain what the symptoms are and how that actually manifests before you can even use the label. And you also have to, and you should also just kind of be like, oh, I'm not sure, but maybe this. You have to really let them come to that conclusion on their own. If you just like outright say it like that, then it's over. And then when you do get to the point that like they are considering it, this is number 5, by the way, you have to have good resources available that are accurate and true to the experience of pathological narcissism. I would recommend, I will actually link a couple things. There is this list of diagnostic criteria written by people who have NPD that I love. That's actually how I woke up my one friend to that, is I was like, do the stuff resonate with you? And I didn't even show him what the name of it was. I just showed him all the criteria, and he was like, oh my god, this resonates so much. What is this? And I was like, oh, narcissistic personality disorder. And he's like, oh, fuck. Eleanor Greenberg wrote a great book called Borderline, Schizoid, and Narcissistic Adaptations. It talks about pathological narcissism in a very non-judgmental light. And what's another thing? And like, or go on the Reddit for NPD. But if you do go there, if you don't have NPD, you're not allowed to post. Just look. And there are some great interviews by on Borderliner Notes, which is a YouTube channel, by Eleanor, by Diana Diamond, Frankie Omens, and Otto Kernberg. I will link one of those too, because that's a great channel. Seriously, check them out. And hopefully once you kind of present it like this, they can resonate with it and at least reflect on it, and maybe they'll come to that conclusion. And maybe then they'll seek some like help. Now the second one is the person who is not obviously struggling. And this is going to have a little bit of a different, what's the word, like strategy. Because if you don't have that rapport with them, you're not going to be able to talk about that directly, and you're just going to have to kind of put the ideas in their head. How I would personally go about that, and I probably wouldn't go about it in this situation, because I'm like, if they're not suffering, or I can't tell if they're suffering, like, it doesn't really, why am I trying to tell them this? You know what I mean? It's like, if they're being shitty to me, then the personality disorder doesn't matter. I just don't want to be around them. So what I would do is I would bring up an interest in narcissism, like describe it as like, oh, this is a really interesting disorder, admit that you had misconceptions about it, and that you were like learning more about it, and it was like really surprising to you, especially then that they can not feel embarrassed that they didn't fully understand what narcissism was. And then like you guys can look, going from there, once you almost have to talk up the disorder at this point. And then once you're able to do that a little bit and kind of open that door, I would say number 2 would be like, I was going to say express sympathy, but not even that, because they're going to take that as pity. I would take it as pity at least. Just like, again, misunderstood, that's the word. It just keeps saying like, oh, these people are way more misunderstood than I thought, blah, blah, blah. Keep using that kind of verbiage, especially a misunderstood part, because people with personality disorders often do feel very misunderstood, because how our like cognition works, more or less, is very distinct for most people. And that leads to a lot of feelings of kind of being alienated, but you know, it is what it is. And again, you have to end it off with those non-judgmental resources that are very neutral in tone and maybe even have positive connotations to them in some degrees. This one, like, I don't think you're even going to know if the person, this actually like sinks in for the person or not, because if you aren't on that level of rapport with them where they're comfortable talking to you about that stuff, they may become self-aware and even start going to therapy and just never tell you, because I mean, most people with a personality disorder kind of know about the stigma around it. They're not really going to want to, you know, disclose that, because again, it's the asshole disorder to most people. Hence why this is so hard to actually get people to get help for it in a lot of instances, at least, and why they won't hear that they are a pathological narcissist is because it's like, oh, one, like, you're already fighting against the self-deceptive defenses against shame. It's like, oh, I don't want to be defective. And 2, it's like, they don't understand that it is a mental condition that is serious and leads to a lot of distress. And 3, when I first was told I was pathologically narcissistic, I was like, what are you talking about? I don't think I'm the greatest person in the world. I hate myself. I think I'm better than everybody, but I still hate myself. And some people might not have that very conscious level of self-hate. Hell, mine wasn't even that conscious. I usually shoved it in the back of my mind and forgot about it. or they'll fluctuate between the self-hate and grandiosity, which I also do. But then the final note of all of this, to like wrap it up, and this piece of advice applies to both the first and second strategy. If they don't identify with it, maybe you're wrong, first of all. People are very bad at identifying pathological narcissism, and I think it'd be great, and I think it's great that like, oh, you're trying to like help this person and everything. But if they're like, no, this doesn't describe me, and it's like, then either they don't have it or they are not at a point that they are ready to accept that. Both those things just kind of have to accept. And if they're treating you shitty, then as I said, like regardless of personality disorder or not, fucking, if they aren't willing to change for any reason, then do what's best for you. But again, you can bring a horse to water, can't make it drink. God, I hate that saying. I'm not sure even why I hate that saying, I just do. Anyways, I think that's it for this video. Hope this was insightful. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I have like buttons and crap up here. It's so cool. Anyways, bye. Take your fucking meds.